Hey guys!
Welcome back to our channel, Plots with a Twist,
where we discuss books,
amongst other things. And today we have a cute video for you guys. We're going to be discussing our most disappointing reads thus far. So books that we've read that we were kind of excited to read but ended up being a complete disappointment. Not a complete, but you know.
Kind of.
What I'm saying.
Alright, so let's get into it. So yeah, like Asia mentioned, yes, books, we were like, oh, let's get this on our TBR list.
Excited.
The premise, the synopsis, whatever about it drew us to that particular book. And yeah, I'll start, I guess.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So I'm gonna get my very controversial one out the way. I mentioned this before and I wrap up.
And I think when you mentioned it before, it was controversial, whatever you had to say about it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. So yeah, I was really excited to read it. It was my first Toni Morrison book. Shame, I know. But I do plan to read some of her other books. I have a few, so I'm gonna read them. But yeah, The Bluest Eye was just about this young girl who was in a situation where she was pregnant at the age of 12 by her father, and just the people around her life, just their influence on her, and just kind of how they kind of took things out on her. Just a really tough story to kind of get into based off the situation at hand. But just, I don't know, it was just disappointing to me because I really thought I would be engaged with the story. I really thought even if it wasn't something I can kind of relate to, it would be something about it that is just like, oh my God, you know, this was a good story even though it was kind of deep. And it was just, for me, it was just completely like, I was put off by a lot of the details. I wasn't put off by her writing because her writing was still good, so I will say that. But just what The Bluest Eye, I understand it was her first book. I understand the career she had afterwards, the life she led, but as my introduction to Toni Morrison, I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh, this is...
You started with the wrong book, but that's neither here nor there.
You start from the beginning, right?
No, not always.
Okay. Well, yeah, so that
one... when you started with somebody who has so many books.
Yeah, I guess. So, but yeah, it is what it is. I'm going to read more, but The Bluest Eye was just disappointing for me.
Well, I haven't even read it, so I can't really say.
Oh, read it, and then you'll be like, okay, girl, I know what you mean.
Okay, so I'm going to start with, this is kind of controversial because I probably said on this channel that I love the book, which is still true, but it was disappointing in a way. And this is Such a Fun Age by KILEY Reid.
Yes.
Is it KILEY Reid? Okay, so by KILEY Reid. And, you know, we did a whole book review video on that book. And it was a good book. It was a story about, Kristen, what was it about? It was about this girl, a black girl, who ends up being a nanny for a white family, and just like the different racial like things you have to go through being like a young black girl, and the family that she was working for. Like, she was working for this woman who was basically like unaware of her privilege in a way, but tried to, you know, walk around like she had it all figured out. So we'll link the book review below if you want to know more about that book. But I say that one was kind of disappointing because after reading it and then kind of taking everything in, I think that I felt like she missed a lot of opportunities to address certain things about race and about what the main character, which I forget her name right now. Amira, like, was going through, right? Like, such as things with her, like she was dating a white boy, and just, I don't know, little things about
little nuances that could have been
like, yeah, that could have been addressed or more well thought out, because it was a book that was so centered on race and a lot of stuff that's going on now. It just kind of missed the mark a little bit, so that was disappointing for me about Such a Fun Age. It was still a good book, it's still a good read, and I was suggesting people to still read it, but it did miss some key points that I felt like could have.
A mixed message.
Why? Because I said still read it.
Yeah,
But because it was good, and I think that, and I don't think everybody feels like that. I think some people read it and felt like maybe it addressed those points the way they should have been. So, but you know, that's the thing. That's the thing about those.
I've seen that feedback as well. So I mean, you're not wrong. I think people did say still read it, and in some books that you might read at the time you really enjoy it, but then things
then you think about it later on, or you watch other people, and that's probably bad to say because you don't want to make it seem like your opinion's being swayed by other people's, but people bring up things you like, I didn't think about that, and then you start to think about it, right? And then you're like, they did, that was that. So yeah, so it was one of those type of things for me. So yeah, what you got next, Kristen?
All right, the next book. Oh, I should have wrote down her name. Okay, so the next book I have is Darling Rose Gold by Stephanie WROBEL.
Look at you.
I remembered. But okay, so I said it on our wrap up. I mentioned this book in a wrap up we did. I was gonna say not too long ago, but I don't know what day it is, so can't even say that. But so Darling Rose Gold was a book I saw that was everywhere. I kind of bought into the hype, and just reading the synopsis, it really seemed like something I would identify with. It was about a young, well, not a young girl, but a girl who basically her mom had Munchism by proxy, so basically was making her sick her entire life, and just dealing with the fallout of her mom being released from prison and her trying to rebuild or reconcile with her after, you know, some time apart. So I really thought it was going to get into the nitty gritty of, ooh, this is a weird dynamic, you know, where you really have some trauma that is directly caused by your parent that you can identify. The parent has to reconcile what they did with the child. Like, I really thought it was going to get into something. That book, it was just really disappointing for me because it was just, I said it in our wrap up, it was just kind of disgusting. It was just really like this, it was painted as this revenge story, and I'm like, revenge on who? Why are you getting revenge on the mom? Because okay, that's kind of, it's not really a spoiler because that's how it's painted, but the mom served her time. Who's to say she didn't change and grow from that time, and the daughter just immediately came with this plan of action against her mom? And it's like, dude, have a conversation first. Let her do you wrong again, and then you go with your plot.
Don't
like,
do me wrong again.
I don't know. It was just certain things about it that was just, that kind of took away from the feel, because you couldn't really be on the daughter's side
because you just felt like it wasn't warranted.
Right, it was warranted in a certain way, but there should have,
she was putting the sauce.
Right, it should have been another catalyst there that really took her off the deep end versus it being, as soon as she get out of jail, here's my plan. Whatever. So yeah, I really thought it was going to be something I would enjoy, but it disappointed me. So that's Darling Rose Gold.
Okay, so my next disappointing book I'm going to talk about is, I'm trying to figure out. Okay, let's talk about Mrs. Westaway by Ruth WARE. So that is a book that I've read recently that I think Kristen already mentioned in our last wrap up. Did you?
Yeah, we both did. You did, actually, because that's your one book.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, it sure was. So yeah, I read that book and it was good for what it was. But, and shout out to you guys that leave comments and suggest stuff. One of our well, Kristen came and told me. I didn't see for myself, so you could blame Kristen. She told me that y'all had said that the book was the best Ruth WARE book thus far. It was better than her other ones, or no? Am I making that up?
She said it was a better Ruth WARE book.
Okay. And I think that we had read that somewhere else too. Like, didn't
we read that a couple of places? Yeah, some of the reviews
said better book. And granted, I did the audio book. I didn't read it, so, and I read all her the other two. We've only read 3 of her books so far, right? So the other 2 I actually read, but yeah, I just didn't feel that Mrs. Westaway was as, out of the 3 I read of Ruth WARE, I felt like I put that one at the bottom.
What?
I liked Woman in Cabin 10.
In a Dark Dark Wood?
The best. Okay, in the Dark Dark Wood they have a lot. Okay, let me think about it.
You should.
It's at the same level because I feel like there was a lot of unnecessary, and that was my problem within a Dark Dark Wood, I think too. There was a lot of unnecessary, like, just especially towards the end, like filler and things like, okay, it could have been ended there, like, I don't know, Ruth, where sometimes she just takes things off the deep end, and I appreciate her attention to detail where she kind of wants to wrap everything up, but it's like, girl, get to the point. Like, some stuff just drags on, and I felt like that, especially with Mrs. Westaway, towards the end of the book, where, you know, she was just dealing with a lot. So that was a little disappointing for me because I feel like Kristen hyped it up for me.
I did not do anything. I said, hey, we got this suggestion. It's one of the books we have. I enjoyed it. So, I mean, whatever.
It for the most part, but I expected more.
Well, we have an update on the comments. Somebody else said that what is it? Turn the key, whatever one of her ones. Not the most recent, but the one before that. They said that one was really good. But she does have a brand new one, I think.
Oh, she keeps churning them out. So yeah, so that's my take on that. I still enjoyed it for the most part, but it just disappointed me a little bit because I think I went into it expecting a little bit more. So
I didn't do anything. All right. So the next one for me that was disappointing was actually The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin.
Oh, wow, I like them. I'm not gonna say I love it, but
so The Immortalists was about young siblings that went to a fortune teller and were told the date of their death, and basically went into each sibling's life as they kind of made different decisions that led up to that date. And I really thought I would enjoy it because it was a touch of magical realism. It had a really strong premise in that, you know, ooh, what's going to happen? Is the fortune teller going to be right? Is she not? And, I mean, the fact that the date was broken up, the book was broken up by siblings. So, basically, she went into this sibling first. Boom. From this, and then put the year, from this year to this year. Then this sibling next, boom, from this year to this year. This sibling next, boom, from this year to this year. And it's like, where's the mystery? Where's the guessing? It kind of ruined it for me because ultimately you figure out what's going on prior to.
Once you get past the first.
Right.
First
you're like,
sibling,
okay, maybe the second one will be a little bit surprising. No. So I guess the point of the story is to be with them during their journey. And I don't know if that kind of spoils it. I'm sorry if it did, but but yeah, ultimately it didn't provide enough mystery to me that the premise promised. Like the synopsis kind of made it seem like you were gonna go on this journey and see how these siblings kind of came together. She's very much kept each sibling separate. So while this one's getting 10-20 years older, you don't hear about them until you probably got 100 pages left, and you're like, where is she this whole time? So she has to go backtrack what this sibling was doing during these years. I feel like she probably should have alternated between what was happening, this sibling this year, blah, 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 and kind of broke it up a little. But I think she kind of did a disservice to herself blocking it off by siblings, and that kind of didn't take me on the journey I was expecting. So for that reason, it was just disappointing. It could have been good. It could have been better. Yeah, so The Immortalists. So
that's surprising. I like The Immortalists, but I do understand what you're saying about it. So the next book that I felt was very much disappointing is a book that we also have a book review on this channel for, and that we discussed.
So you just be lying in your book reviews.
No, because we talked about how disappointing this was. And that was A Silent Patient by Alex
MICHAELIDES.
Yes. So yeah, y'all know how we felt about that book if you've been watching us and you've seen that video. So basically, The Silent Patient is about a woman who is like, she kills her husband, and she goes into she goes into a mental hospital, and she's mute, like she doesn't talk. And it's told from the perspective of the nurse that's or the psychotherapist that's supposed to be taking care of her. And
drink a drink.
I am. And yeah, so it just goes into like his life and how basically like how their lives are intertwined. It goes from how he became a therapist, how he got into the work, and then slowly into his connection with the lady, and then you get into this big old plot twist and stuff at the end. And it was disappointing because we did want to read that book because it was one of those books at the time that was everywhere, and just like, oh, you have to read this thriller, which we both love thrillers and suspense novels, so we were excited to read it. And it was like, oh, you know, there's these crazy plot twists you're never gonna guess type of thing. And it was not all of that. Like, we just weren't, a lot of it was, as you came up on it, it was a little predictable, and then a lot of it was also dragged out, and some of it also, to me, the character, he wasn't very likable either, like the narrator, the main guy, yeah, he wasn't likable. So I feel like
He's
that
trying to
also
remember
had,
his name?
Yeah.
Theo.
Theo. Yeah, Theo was a kind of a jerk
knocking them out.
and an a-hole, so I don't particularly.
And no, I didn't look up none of these names. I
She
just
did. No, I'm just
top of the
kidding.
dome.
But yeah, so that was why it was disappointing, and the plot twists weren't even like, they were very mild
I was
and
like, oh,
lackluster.
okay.
Yeah,
I can see that.
So it was just one of those books that was heavily gassed and didn't live up to the hype for us, or for me. I'll speak for myself.
It's disappointing.
So yeah, it's very much disappointing. So yeah, but you guys know that from the book review. So what do you have, Kristen?
So the last book I want to mention, I want to say I don't want to have this on the list because it had high hopes. I had high hopes for it, but it just overall, it was disappointing to me. And that's Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno-GARCIA. I believe that's her name. Let me make sure. I just looked it up.
You did just look it up.
Okay. So that was about, it was a Mayan mythology tale, and I was like, ooh, what is this? Let me get into it, because I don't mind mythology. I actually prefer it. So when it gave a different scope, because I'm used to Greek mythology, and I'm like, oh, there's other civilizations you can has mythology, duh. So when it was like Mayan mythology, I was like, yes. So it was about this girl who, it's kind of like a Cinderella-esque story, I guess, if I can put a fairy tale with it, where she's kind of like the housemaid. She's like the grandfather's like least favorite grandchild, at least that's how she feels. Her older cousin, he always like bullies her, and one day she's left at home as a punishment while the rest of the family goes to do this thing for her grandfather, and he leaves his key to this this chest that he has in his room, and basically she opens it and there's the god of death, if I'm recalling correctly. Yeah, something like that. And they go on this journey together to basically get him his missing relics or body parts back, so he can rise to full power, because he was overthrown by his twin brother. So that, I was like, ooh, I like the sound of that. But just the writing style, the way it was kind of told, some of the details didn't come together for me. It felt like the author was battling too much about making the plot plausible instead of just focusing on the heart of the story, and just basically allowing the reader, me, to get lost in the fantasy of it. I couldn't get there. So yeah, I felt like she was doing too much to compensate for the fact that it was a fantasy-based story. I haven't read any of her other books, so I don't know if that's just a consistent theme she has. But because of that, because it kept drawing you back to reality and making you ask questions you don't really need to ask, it was just disappointing. I really wanted to like it. It still has decent ratings, so I will say people did get on with it. Oh, look at me sounding like a UK person. But yeah, it did have some decent reviews. Some people really got immersed in it. Some people are familiar with her writing and may have known to expect that. But me, as a new reader for her, I just was like, I wish I could have been in there with you. I liked how it ended, but the overall story was just disappointing for me. So I'm sorry.
Okay. So the last book that I'm going to talk about, I just switched it because I was going to talk about another book, but I just switched it in my head because I thought about this other book that I read. And so full disclosure, I read it, but I didn't read like the last 2 vignettes in it or something, because it's like one of those with like stories in each chapter, because it was whack. And it's called Black Swans by BABITZ. You don't know that?
I don't.
You don't know that book, because it was one of those books that I read before we started reading together, I think. Oh no, I think I was reading it as we were reading together, but it was just that whack that I was just like, okay, threw it to the side. So that book was disappointing because I read BABITZ's book Sex and Rage a while ago, and she's like I I should have researched this. She is a woman who used to hang around like famous rock stars and stuff during like the 70s and 80s and all that. And so she has a lot of stories from those times. And I want to say she's an artist, like something like that. I don't know. But yeah, she has a lot of stories from those times. And Sex and Rage, although it was a fictional story, it was kind of about a dreamy girl who lived in LA and kind of was like chasing her dream and just like her different experiences. And it kind of gave you that raw, like coming of age type of story, like, you know, like very much you can imagine. Yeah, like
you need to read
in the
that.
60s, like type of thing. So but yeah, with Black Swans, it's a collection of stories that I believe is based on her real life, but each story to me was very much pretentious and just kind of going over the same things as far as her experiences and dealing with different people in her life and different men and just different scenes in LA. From one story to the next, they kind of mirrored the same thing. So that was a little disappointing because, you know, I thought it was going to be more the same level of Sex and Rage, but, you know, actual stories, but it wasn't. It was kind of like, girl, what are you talking about? So yeah, that was disappointing. Well, I'm glad I thought about that too because I was excited for that book, but I'm not gonna finish it.
Let's use our favorite term, or my new favorite term.
What?
I thought it was gonna be a little bit more robust.
Since when do you say robust?
I don't know. I heard somebody say it in a sentence, and now I'm like, yes, I like how that sounds. All right.
So yeah, it didn't have any robustness. So I didn't like it. But yeah.
So that was pretty much our disappointing reads. Let us know what books you kind of felt were disappointing for you and why.
And if you agree with any of ours that we have.
Yes.
And if you don't, and why.
Yeah. I might. Obviously, we can be influenced by other people's comments.
I'm easily influenced.
All right. So like I said, comment below, like this video, subscribe, ring that bell so you can know when we're ready for a new video. Right. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.